Lesson 4. Abdul-Muttalib. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma akhrijna min zulumatil wahm wa akrimna binuril fahm. Allahumma aftah alayna abwaba rahmatik wanshur alayna khazaina ulumik birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Welcome to lesson 4 about Abdul-Muttalib of our Module 1, Pre-Prophetic Period of our course AIS 1235 about Siratun Nabi. In the previous lesson about Hashim, we have learned that his name will always shine in the history of Arabia and Islam, not only because he was the great-grandfather of the Holy Prophet, but in his own right because of his tremendous achievements. He may well be compared with any great leader of his time. He was the most generous, the most prestigious, and the most respected leader of the Quraysh at that time. He used to feed the pilgrims during Hajj with royal open-handedness. But the best testimonial to his benevolence is his title Hashim, means one who breaks the bread, whereby he came to be known. For this lesson, Hashim had 5 sons: Abdul-Muttalib, Asad, Nadla, Saifi, and Abu Saifi. But the last 3 had no children, while Asad had only a daughter named Fatima bint Asad, who happened to be the mother of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Thus, it was only through Abdul-Muttalib that the progeny of Hashim survived. Abdul-Muttalib was born at Yathrib, later named Medina, in his maternal grandfather's house, and he was only a few months old when Hashim died. If you can remember, Hashim used to travel from Makkah to Syria or Sham, and then from Makkah to Yemen. And then he would pass by Yathrib. So we have to take note that Abdul-Muttalib, his mother was a Yathribi woman. So he grew up, he spent his first few years there before being taken to Makkah. After Hashim, his brother Muttalib succeeded him in all the privileges mentioned earlier. And after some time, Muttalib went to Yathrib, brought his nephew to Makkah. When Muttalib entered Makkah with his nephew behind him on his back, or on his camel, some people said, "This is the slave of Muttalib." By the way, Abdul-Muttalib literally means the slave of Muttalib. So Muttalib would respond, "No, he is my nephew and son of my deceased brother Hashim." But the name stuck, though today few people know that the real name of Abdul-Muttalib was Shaybatul Hamd. Muttalib loved Abdul-Muttalib and looked after him very well, like his own son. But Abdul Shams and Naufil, the boy's uncles, were hostile towards him. At the death of Muttalib, Abdul-Muttalib succeeded him in the 2 privileges held by him, namely Siqaya and Rifada, among the privileges and functions distributed among the Quraysh leaders. And if you can remember, Siqaya means the system of making arrangements to supply water to the pilgrims during the Hajj days, while Rifada refers to the system of feeding the pilgrims during those days. In spite of the enmity of his own uncles, his personal virtues and qualities of leadership earned him in later days the title of Sayyidul Batha, the Chief of Makkah, and he lived to the ripe age of 82. As an anecdote, a carpet was spread for him before the Kaaba and nobody dared to put his foot on it. In later days, this rule was broken only by the orphan son of Abdullah, that is the Holy Prophet, who used to sit there, and Abdul-Muttalib forbade Quraysh from interfering with the child because he told them, "This child of mine is to have a special dignity." It was Abdul-Muttalib who had forbidden his children from using intoxicants. It was he who used to enter the cave of Hira during the month of Ramadan, as what the Prophet used to do during his time also, to spend the month in remembrance of Allah and in feeding the poor. Like his father and son and uncle, he used to feed and provide water for the pilgrims during the Hajj season. And during the whole year, even the beasts and birds were fed from his house. And accordingly, he was called Mut'imut Tayr, which means the feeder of the birds. Mut'im, feeder, at Tayr means bird or the bird. Some of the systems originated by Abdul Muttalib were actually later adopted in Islam. He was the first person to make nadhr and fulfill it. Nadhr means vow, religious promise. For example, you would say that if my child who is sick now gets better, I would fast for 3 days for the sake of Allah. So that promise of yours will become obligatory once your child gets better, and you have to fulfill it. To give 1/5 or khums of the treasure in the way of Allah. To forbid prohibited degrees, meaning the marriage of very closely related individuals, like father and stepdaughter, among others. To cut a thief's hand, to make intoxicants unlawful, to forbid fornication and adultery, to discourage the system of killing the daughters, as was the custom during that day, on the belief that a baby daughter would bring ignominy and shame on the father, especially once there was a war and this daughter becomes a captive. To discourage the tawaf around the Kaaba without clothes, the Arabs during the time of ignorance or Yawmul Jahiliyyah, they used to perform tawaf without any clothes, meaning they perform tawaf naked. To fix the compensation of manslaughter, killing someone by mistake or unintentionally, at 100 camels. And Islam adopted all these systems. It is not possible to give the whole history of Abdul Muttalib in this course, but two important events must be mentioned. One, the recovery of Zamzam, and the other one, the attempted attack on the Kaaba by Abraha, the governor of Ethiopia, over Yemen. Hundreds of years ago, Zamzam was filled up and nobody knew where it was after a long time after Ismail and Hajar. One day, Abdul-Muttalib was sleeping in Hatim of the Kaaba. By the way, when you say Hatim, we are referring to a low wall originally part of the Kaaba. While he was sleeping, someone told him in a dream to dig the Taiba and get water. He asked where Taiba was, but the vision vanished without any reply. The same vision was repeated the second and the third day, but the names were changed every time. On the fourth day, he was told to dig Zamzam. Abdul-Muttalib asked where Zamzam was. He was told the signs. So Abdul-Muttalib with his eldest son, and at that time the only son, Harith ibn Abdul-Muttalib, dug the place where Zamzam is today. On the fourth day, the wall of the well appeared and after some more digging, the water well was reached. At this success, Abdul Muttalib cried, Allahu Akbar, and said, this is the well of Ismail. Qurayshites gathered around him and started arguing that since the original well was the property of Ismail, the recovered well too belonged to the whole tribe. Abdul Muttalib rejected their claim, saying that it was given especially to him by Allah. And the Qurayshites wanted to fight and fill up the well, then dig it up again. At last, they agreed to put their case before the wise woman of the tribe of Saad in Syria. At that time, this wise woman in Syria was known for her wisdom and fairness. So every clan sent one man as its representative. Abdul Muttalib with his son, Harith, and a few companions were in the same caravan. But he had his separate arrangements. In the middle of the desert, the water which Abdul Muttalib had was finished. The whole group was suffering from acute thirst. The leaders of the other party used to refuse to give them any water. They were near their death. Abdul Muttalib advised his group to dig some graves so that when anybody died, others would bury him. Thus, only one person, the last one to die, would remain unburied. So they dug up their own graves. While they were doing this, the opposite party was enjoying the scene. On the second day, Abdul Muttalib exhorted his companions that it was cowardice to succumb to death like that without making a last effort. Thus, he rode his camel, and the camel arose, and in so doing, its foot hit the earth, and lo, a stream of cool, sweet water appeared. Abdul Muttalib cried, Allahu Akbar. His companions too cried, Allahu Akbar. They quenched their thirst, filled their water skins, and then Abdul Muttalib invited the opposite group to fill their water skins from that fountain. His own companions objected, but he said, if we do the same as they had done, there would be no difference between us and them. So the whole caravan gathered around that fountain. They drank and filled their water skins. Then they said, O Abdul Muttalib, by Allah, Allah has decided between you and us. He has given you victory. By Allah, we will never dispute with you about Zamzam. The same Allah who has created this fountain here in this desert for you has given Zamzam to you. So Zamzam became the personal property of Abdul-Muttalib. As such, he dug the well deeper. While doing so, two deer made of gold, some swords, and coats of mail were found buried therein. So it means to say they are ghanima. Again, the Quraysh demanded a share in the treasure. Again, Abdul Muttalib refused. At last, the dispute was decided by lot, which gave the golden deer to the Kaaba and the swords and the coats of mail to Abdul Muttalib. And the Quraysh got nothing. It was then that Abdul Muttalib dedicated 1/5 of his own share, that is khums, to the Kaaba. Next meeting, we will deal with Lesson 5, the Year of the Elephant, or Amul Fil. So for more similar lessons, subscribe to Wayfaring with Mansoor channel, and thank you so much.